In my previous life, my husband died in a car accident. I only found out when I went to file the insurance claim that the beneficiary for all his life insurance policies was his widowed sister-in-law. While sorting through his belongings, I discovered a box he had hidden in a secret compartment of his study. It was filled with photographs of his widowed sister-in-law. They spanned from her youthful days all the way into her middle age. There were hundreds of them. At the very bottom of the box lay a child's birth certificate. It turned out that the daughter we had adopted from the orphanage was actually his child with his widowed sister-in-law. I was so enraged, my blood boiling, that I wanted nothing more than to dig up his ashes and scatter them to the wind. Dazed, I was walking along the road when a car hit me, sending me tumbling into a ditch. In my dazed state, I seemed to hear my daughter talking to someone else. That woman is not my real mother. What do I care if she lives or dies? Don't call an ambulance yet. It would be better if she died. I could get the compensation money sooner. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the 3rd year of my marriage to my husband, the very year he wanted to adopt a daughter. In this life, I will step aside and let him be with his widowed sister-in-law, wishing their family of 3 a happy and complete reunion. I was at home preparing dinner when I got the call from the police informing me that Chen Yufeng had been in a traffic accident on Qingdong South Road. Chen Yufeng and I had just spoken on the phone half an hour earlier. He said something had come up at work and he might be home late. There's no way his route from the office to our house would take him past Qingdong South Road, so when I first got the news, my immediate thought was that it was a scam call. But the person on the other end was deadly serious. He said Chen Yufeng was critically injured and that I needed to get to the emergency room at City General Hospital immediately. I was still half convinced, half doubting, yet, I quickly turned off the stove, took off my apron, and hurried downstairs. I kept calling Chen Yufeng the whole way, but the phone was already switched off. 20 minutes later, I arrived at the City People's Hospital, only to receive a death certificate from the doctor. My legs gave way beneath me, and I collapsed to the floor at the sight of that bloodied, mangled person in the emergency room. While making arrangements for Chen Yufeng's funeral, I fainted several times from overwhelming grief. My family and friends all urged me to accept their condolences and take care. They pleaded with me not to let the sorrow ruin my health. Yet, I had spent 30 years by his side. Now, with his sudden passing, how could my heart not be broken? After Qin Yuhui was laid to rest, I sat alone in his study, tears falling in silence. Grief, like a raging tide, slowly engulfed me. The study was where he spent most of his time. Whenever he needed to think, or simply wanted some peace and quiet, he would lock himself in this little room of less than 20 square meters, gently running my fingers over the items he used. A sharp pain gripped my chest, making it hard to breathe. Death had come so suddenly. Suddenly, I was at his desk. And there was the book he was halfway through, a corner of the page still folded down. Suddenly, I was at his notebook, and there were his unfinished reading notes. I sat in the chair at the desk, the one he used every day, and gently pulled open the drawer. The items inside the drawer were arranged neatly in perfect order. Qin Yufeng had always been a neat freak, even bordering on obsessive-compulsive about cleanliness. I took out the contents one by one and leafed through them, only to discover that these documents were, in fact, individual life insurance policies. Most of the insurance companies were based in Hong Kong. When on earth did Qin Yufeng buy so many insurance policies? I had absolutely no idea. Looking at that thick stack of insurance policies, tears welled up and overflowed. I cried until I was completely choked up. In my naivety, I thought these policies were Qin Yufeng's way of planning for our family's risks, a gesture of responsibility towards me and our daughter. However, it wasn't until 2 months later, when I went to file the insurance claim, that I discovered the truth. The beneficiary of Qin Yuzhou's life insurance policy was not his parents, not his daughter, and certainly not me. It was his widowed sister-in-law, Su Yunji. I don't remember how I got home. I felt completely hollowed out, as if my soul had been ripped away, and my mind had gone completely blank. I wanted to fall apart. I wanted to scream in rage. I wanted to grab Qin Yufeng and demand to know what the hell was going on, but he was already dead. I couldn't get an answer. At 3 in the morning, I still couldn't sleep. I got up and went to Qin Yufeng's study once more. Like a madman, I frantically rummaged through the items in Qin Yufeng's study, tossing the things I'd already checked directly onto the floor. Finally, after clearing everything off the bookshelf, I spotted a hidden compartment on the 3rd shelf. The compartment wasn't large, just about the size of a shoebox. Inside was a wooden box the color of walnut. When I opened the wooden box and saw what was inside, I was utterly speechless with shock. Inside were only a few letters and a birth certificate. The rest were all photographs of Su Yunji. There were photos of her crouched on a bustling street, quietly petting a cat in front of a cafe. There she was. Bustling about the kitchen in her apron. There she was. Radiant on stage during a theater performance with the troupe. There she was. In travel photos from scenic spots around the world, arms outstretched as if embracing nature, serene, smiling, pensive, frowning. Behind every photo lies the moment it was taken, and a story. The earliest one dates all the way back to the first year of my marriage to Chen Yufeng. In our next life, if I am unmarried and you are unwed, let's be together. Shall we? June 1994, they were talking in the living room. While you and I were in the kitchen preparing the New Year's Eve dinner. Does this count as our first date? January 1995, my brother passed away from illness, but when I saw you dressed in mourning white, an inappropriate thought came to mind. A woman looks most striking in the white of mourning. For the rest of my life, I will take care of you in his place. October 1996, you look just as beautiful while pregnant. I thought it was worth recording. March 1997. I specifically took you to Hong Kong for a trip, and while there, I bought a life insurance policy. Most mainland policies wouldn't allow me to name you as the beneficiary, but if I die, I want to leave everything to you. You are the only true love of my life. March 2010, hundreds of photos, with Chen Yufeng capturing 30 years of her life. My eyes ached with a raw, stinging soreness. Yet not a single tear would fall. I had no idea how much time had passed. I'd entered this study at 3 in the morning, and now a warm sun was shining brightly outside. My mind was a complete fog as I stumbled out the door in a daze. In that moment, the only thought in my head was to dig Chen Yufeng out of his grave and scatter his ashes to the wind. I had just stepped out of the neighborhood gate when a car hit me, sending me flying. Crimson blood trickled down from my forehead and into my eyes. My vision began to blur, fading until there was nothing but emptiness. A powerful sense of weightlessness washed over me, making my head spin. I desperately reached out, trying to grasp something to support my body. A pair of large, ice-cold hands, like the body of a snake, tightly gripped my own. I struggled to open my eyes. The Chen Yufeng before me appeared to be in his 20s. He held my hand gently, yet his eyes held a distant indifference. The doctor says you have a concussion. You need to stay in the hospital for observation for 2 days and can be discharged the day after tomorrow. I stared at the man before me, both familiar and a stranger, and fell into a stunned silence. But wasn't he supposed to be dead? How did I get so young? I looked around, and the surroundings felt strangely familiar. A surreal sense of dream and reality intertwining washed over me. What's happening to me? The moment I spoke, I realized my voice was terribly hoarse. Chen Yufeng frowned slightly and asked, "You don't remember?" Seeing the confusion in my eyes, his tone held a hint of reproach. "Honestly, what were you thinking? Trying to handle that all by yourself? You're a woman. Doesn't your company have any male colleagues? Did they really need you to be the one hanging the lanterns over the company gate? We had it all arranged with the orphanage director to finalize the adoption paperwork this afternoon, and now, look, everything's been delayed." A flicker of disgust, almost imperceptible, passed over his face as he looked at me. Memories slowly came flooding back. It's coming back to me now. It was the end of 1997, our company had a great year, so the boss decided to throw a big, lively New Year's party. Everyone was bustling about. While I was helping to hang lanterns, I accidentally fell off the ladder. I hit my head right against the wall and got a slight concussion. This is the 3rd year of my marriage to Chen Yufeng. It's also the year Chen Yufeng suddenly decided we should adopt a child. He said that with his older brother gone, and us having no luck conceiving after years of trying, his parents couldn't move past the grief of losing their firstborn son, so we decided to adopt a child to bring some life into the house. Even if I get pregnant later, at worst we just pay an extra social maintenance fee. We can easily afford to raise 2 children. I thought about it and, since it didn't seem like a bad thing, I agreed. In our previous life, we met quite a few children. The director of the welfare home advised us to consider adopting a child around 1 year old. He said that children this young don't retain many memories, so it's easier to bond with them. They're also relatively less demanding to care for, which makes them a good fit for young, first-time parents like us. I understood his point. He was deeply concerned that adoptive parents might abandon the child a second time. Yet Chen Yufeng insisted on adopting a newborn baby girl who was sickly and frail. His explanation was that he felt an instant connection with the child the moment he saw her and genuinely adored her from the bottom of his heart. Looking back now, she was his biological daughter. How could he not feel that connection? As a result, less than 2 months after the adoption was finalized, the child suddenly had difficulty breathing one night, her lips turning a frightening shade of blue. taking her to the hospital for an examination revealed she had complex congenital heart disease. Upon seeing her, the doctor immediately insisted on hospitalization. In my past life, to care for this frail daughter of mine, I quit my job and took her to seek medical treatment all across the country. We finally found a specialist in Beijing. The doctor said that for a complex congenital heart condition like hers, the surgery would cost at least 70 or 80,000 yuan. Back in 1997, Qin Yufeng and I combined only earned a little over 2,000 yuan a month, but our child's condition was already critical. The doctor said that without immediate surgery, their life was in danger at any moment. Qin Yufeng and I used up all our savings, including the dowry my parents had given me. We also had to borrow some money from relatives and friends, but it was still nowhere near enough. In the end, we had to mortgage the house to the bank and, through personal connections, find a guarantor to secure a loan of 30,000 yuan. Only then did we manage to scrape together the surgery fees. After the surgery, I underwent a year of medication-assisted therapy. For many years to come, I not only had to care for my sickly child, but also worked tirelessly to earn money and pay off debts. I toiled from dawn till dusk, scrimping and saving every penny. And what was the child's own mother, Su Yunji, doing all this time? She was at the repertory theater, living the glamorous life of an actress. She was surrounded by flowers and applause. She was elegant, composed, gentle, and serene. She lived a life of comfort and contentment, yet she placed the bastard child she had with my husband right beside me, to drain me of my lifeblood. Recalling the events of my past life, a torrent of hatred surged within me. I looked up at Qin Yufeng. His lips were pressed into a tight line, his face dark as storm clouds. Noticing my intense stare, he looked puzzled. "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" I didn't respond. He let out a soft sigh. "Mom and Dad are waiting at home, just hoping we'd bring the child back to meet them." "How could you be so careless? The same thing happened in my past life." Qin Yufeng kept nagging in my ear, and it actually made me feel a twinge of guilt. So, in the afternoon, once I felt no discomfort, I insisted on being discharged from the hospital. To be honest, there's nothing seriously wrong with my health, but now I won't let Qin Yufeng manipulate me anymore. I glanced at the undisguised reproach on his face and said flatly, "If you want to raise someone else's child, go handle the paperwork yourself. I'm not feeling well, so I won't be joining you." Qin Yufeng frowned, visibly displeased. "Adoption procedures definitely require both spouses to be present with their documents. How could I possibly manage it alone?" He paused, then asked hesitantly, "You're not having second thoughts, are you?" "I'm not sure," I said noncommittally. "Yes, I don't plan on adopting someone else's child anymore." Qin Yufeng instantly grew frantic, his voice rising several notches. "But we had an agreement. How can you go back on your word now? Since you can't have children, adopting one would spare you the pain of all those medications and injections. It would also stop people from gossiping behind our backs. My older brother passed away from illness a few years ago without leaving any children. If we also end up childless, how could our parents possibly bear it?" Qin Yufeng is always like this. Whenever the topic of having children comes up, he automatically assumes it's my problem. I snorted coldly, "Don't you dare pin the blame on me. For all we know, the problem might be with you. Since we're already at the hospital, let's both go for a full set of fertility tests tomorrow." In a moment of panic, Qin Yufeng blurted out, "If we can't have a child, it must be your problem. I already have." At that point, he immediately realized his mistake and cut himself off. I stared at him coldly. "You have what? Don't tell me you have a secret love child." Qin Yufeng's face flushed a deep crimson. A flicker of guilt flashed in his eyes as he protested. "How could I possibly have a love child? Don't talk nonsense. If the wrong people heard you, it would ruin my reputation." "Ha, he's already been caught in bed with his own sister-in-law, and he's still worried about his reputation." I turned over, pulled the covers over my head, and refused to say another word to him. The following afternoon, Su Yunji walked into the ward carrying a bottle of royal jelly and a bag of oranges. Seeing her arrive, Qin Yufeng stood up excitedly from his chair. He walked over and naturally took the items from her hands, asking with concern, "It's so cold out. What brings you here?" "Shushin is fine, nothing serious. The doctor said she just needs to be observed for a while." Su Yunji shot him an annoyed glare and took a step back to put some distance between them. Then, smiling at me, she said, "Shushin, your fall wasn't too bad, was it? I just heard from Mom and Dad that you were in the hospital. Since I had nothing going on at the troupe, I thought I'd come see you." By now, Qin Yufeng had already brought a stool and placed it behind her. He then thoughtfully poured a glass of water and placed it in her hands, saying, "It's warm, hold it to warm your hands." I rolled my eyes in exasperation. It has to be said, Suyunji is genuinely quite beautiful. Perhaps because it hadn't been long since she gave birth, her figure had softened slightly, making her look a bit fuller, yet this only added an ineffable, mature charm to her appearance. Qin Yufeng's eyes were practically glued to her. In my past life, she told me the theater troupe had sent her to another city for a few months of training. For all those months, she never once showed her face. I was genuinely worried about her safety back then. It was a much more chaotic era than now, where even grown men traveling for business would often meet with accidents, never to be seen again. And what's more, she was a woman, and a beautiful one at that. I had Qin Yufeng write to her to find out where she was studying, and then I sent him with some things to go and see her. At that time, it had been less than a year since Qin Yufeng's eldest brother had passed away. I thought that, as family, it was only right to help look after his widow. That way, he can rest in peace. Thinking back, she must have gone into hiding to have the baby. If my eldest brother knew that less than a year after his death, his wife was pregnant with his own brother's child, he'd be turning in his grave. I was still lost in memories of the past. A woman's voice sounded in her ears. Shuxin, how could you be so careless? Mom and Dad are at home waiting for the child, and they prepared so many gifts. I've also bought the child lots of clothes and toys. The old couple is just sitting at home, sighing with worry. Of all the times you could have taken a fall, it just had to be now. Suyunji might have been talking about my in-laws, but her real target was me. I gave a slight, knowing smile. Sis-in-law, my brother passed away young and didn't leave you with any children. I heard you plan to remain a widow for him for the rest of your life. Since Mom and Dad love kids so much, you could always adopt one. They could help you raise it, and it would grow up to take care of you. Suyunji was taken aback, clearly not expecting me to turn the conversation toward her. Qin Yufeng immediately jumped in to help her out. How is she supposed to raise a child all by herself? Raising a child isn't easy. Besides, sis-in-law is still like a young girl herself, not like you. I couldn't tell if he was trying to compliment me or mock me. I stretched with a big yawn and chuckled. You're right about that. Raising a child is no easy task. My sister-in-law is 32 and still acts like a little girl. I'm only 27. I've got a few more years of fun left in me. Let's talk about adoption another few years down the line. The moment I finished speaking, Qin Yufeng blurted out, no way, I've already made arrangements with the orphanage director. I smiled. Then you and the director can go ahead with the adoption paperwork. I won't be involved. The atmosphere instantly turned frosty. A few minutes later, Suyunji spoke up. Shuxin, as your sister-in-law, I'm going to say something you might not want to hear. I cut him off directly. If you know I don't want to hear it, then shut up. Even if you talk until the sky falls today, there's no way I'm agreeing to adopt a child. If you're so eager, you and Qin Yufeng go file the adoption papers yourselves. You raise the kid, and have her call you Mom and Dad. You three can be your own happy little family. After all, my in-laws are your in-laws too. It's all in the family. It doesn't really matter who does the adopting. Suyunji stared at me in disbelief, her face deathly pale. Shuxin, Qin Yufeng roared at me. How dare you say such rubbish? Apologize to your sister-in-law right now. I silently mouthed the words, apologize my ass, you idiot. Suyunji shot up from her chair and ran out of the room, her eyes red and brimming with tears. Qin Yufeng shot me a venomous glare, and ran out after them. I watched their retreating figures and let out a cold laugh. Ugh, what a despicable pair. I fished my shoes out from under the bed and quietly trailed after them. Suyunji had only just reached the next floor when Qin Yufeng pulled her into a tight embrace. He murmured a quiet reassurance. She's lost her mind. Don't take it to heart. She's always been crude and obnoxious with her words. Don't worry, I'll make sure she agrees to adopt our daughter. If she refuses, I'll divorce her. Please don't cry. It breaks my heart to see you like this. It took a long while for Suyunji to finally stop her quiet, whimpering sobs. She lightly pounded her fist against the man's chest and complained, this is all your fault. If you hadn't been so reckless, I wouldn't have gotten pregnant, and I wouldn't have to be here putting up with her nonsense. Jiejia has been in poor health since birth, and the conditions at the orphanage are just average. I'm afraid something might happen if we delay any longer. Qin Yufeng's face was full of distress. It's all my fault. Jiejia is my daughter too, and I'm just as worried and heartbroken as you are. Shuxin must have hit her head today and isn't thinking straight. It's fine, I'll just smooth things over with her tomorrow. Let me see you home first. The sound of their conversation faded into the distance. I followed them to the main gate of the hospital and watched them board the number 17 bus at the stop. That bus was headed for the residential area where Suyunji lived. I immediately turned around and went back to the hospital room. I gathered my belongings and checked out of the hospital. After being discharged, I didn't go home. Instead, I went to a restaurant on the street, ordered 2 stir-fried dishes, and ate at a leisurely pace. It wasn't until after dark, when the evening study sessions at the nearby high school had let out, I went back to my own place first. My in-laws had already gone to bed, and I frantically woke them up. I told them that Su Yunji had a bit of an accident at home, and that Chen Yufeng sent me to fetch them right away. The moment the in-laws heard their eldest daughter-in-law was in trouble, they immediately got dressed and hurried downstairs. They had always doted on their eldest son. And after his passing, they transferred that affection to Su Yunji. It's no exaggeration to say they cherished her as their own daughter. We hailed a taxi. 20 minutes later, they finally arrived at Su Yunji's residence. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. From inside the room came the faint, suggestive sounds of a man and woman panting, accompanied by the rhythmic creaking of a bed. The husband's parents exchanged a look, their expressions inscrutable, my hand, poised to knock. Frozen mid-air, I took a few steps back, drew a deep breath, took a short run up, and kicked the door open with one powerful blow. Once inside, I charged straight into the bedroom. I scooped up the man's clothes from the floor and hurled them out the window. The air was filled with a man's angry shouts and a woman's panicked screams. I switched on my flashlight, directing the beam onto their faces, my in-laws, who had just burst through the door. Froze in their tracks as if struck by lightning the moment they saw the pair, I rushed out of the room, yelling, "Thief, stop, thief, someone, help." My in-laws rushed over to try and cover my mouth, but I dodged them, darted out of the room, and shouted even louder once I was outside. Within minutes, lights flickered on in the neighboring houses. Soon, people emerged armed with kitchen knives, fire tongs, and rolling pins. Spotting them, I frantically waved them over, yelling, "There's a thief here, come quick, come quick." Everyone gathered at Su Yunji's home. A few minutes later, those people exchanged bewildered glances and filed out. Their faces were a mix of scandalized gossip and utter disbelief. The father-in-law went downstairs and picked up Chen Yufeng's clothes. He slapped his son hard across the face, his voice choked with emotion. "You're worse than an animal. How could you do this to your brother's memory? After all the love and care he showed you growing up, is this how you repay him now that he's gone?" Chen Yufeng hung his head, not daring to speak. The old woman covered her face, weeping uncontrollably. I sighed inwardly. The foolish actions of 2 people would now bring shame upon the entire family. My father-in-law and mother-in-law supported each other as they tottered away. I stood with my arms crossed, staring coldly at the disheveled Su Yunji. Chen Yufeng was wearing his sweater inside out. With only a pair of long johns on his lower half, and his feet were bare, he said softly to Su Yunji, "You go back to the room first, I'll talk to her." I slammed the kitchen knife in my hand into the wall. "Whoever tries to leave, I dare you." Su Yunji's steps toward the room came to an abrupt halt. Chen Yufeng shielded her behind him, gritting his teeth. He said, "This is my fault. If you want to kill or torture someone, come at me. Don't harm Yunji." Seeing the restraint and tenderness in his eyes, I let out a scornful laugh. What a pair of love-struck fools. Su Yunji won't be able to show her face in this neighborhood anymore. I have no problem taking this matter straight to both of your workplaces and letting your supervisors decide what's to be done. If people at your office found out you slept with your widowed sister-in-law, do you really think you'd have any future left? Chen Yufeng's expression darkened by degrees. "Shuxin, what exactly are you trying to achieve? What good does ruining my reputation do for you? Are you really that eager to be publicly humiliated as a cuckold?" Tears welled up in Su Yunji's eyes as she looked at me pitifully. "Shu Xian, I'm so sorry. I had a bit to drink tonight, and thinking of yumming, I mistook Yufeng for him. I swear it will never happen again." With that, her knees buckled, and she knelt down. Chen Yufeng scooped her up in his arms. "Why are you kneeling to her, then?" He snarled at me. "I told you, if you have any anger or resentment directed at me, don't take it out on Yunji." I ignored him. He looked directly at Su Yunji and asked, "So what you're saying is, that was the only time?" Embarrassment washed over her face, but she forced herself to nod. I couldn't help but let out a snort of laughter. Then that baby girl at the orphanage. Could she be a bastard Su Yunji had with some other man? In an instant, Su Yunji trembled violently, her face as pale as a sheet. Chen Yufeng was also thrown into a panic. I slapped Chen Yufeng hard across the face. "You bastard, Big Brother only passed away last October. He asked you to look after our parents and Yunji on his deathbed. Is this how you look after his widow?" Chen Yufeng's face flushed crimson with humiliation. Unable to utter a single word, I slapped him again. "Our brother's body is barely cold, and within a year, Yunji has given birth to your child. I don't believe for a second that happened on the first try, so tell me, when exactly did this affair start? Was it when my elder brother was still alive, or was it before he was even laid to rest? I took one deliberate step after another, closing in on Chen Yufeng. I was so close now that I could see his nostrils flaring with tension and his lips trembling faintly. I enunciated each word with cold clarity. The sight of you, the thought of what you've done, it makes me sick. I want a divorce. And I want you to walk away with nothing. Chen Yufeng's body trembled twice, but he still tried to weasel out of it. Shuxin, I was wrong. But it was really just this one time with Yunji. That child isn't mine. I took a deep breath, suppressing the anger within. Even now, he's still refusing to admit the truth. Fine. If you say it's not yours, then let's go to the hospital for a test and see if it really is. If it is yours, then I demand you publish a formal apology to me in the newspaper. I grabbed him and started pulling him toward the door. Chen Yufeng wrenched his arm free from my grasp. I stared at him coldly. Whether the child is yours or not is irrelevant to me. Right now, I have only two demands. I want a divorce. And you will leave with nothing. I don't agree, Chen Yufeng said. His neck stiff with defiance. I laughed out loud. It's fine if you don't agree. I'll just write a letter to your workplace, and another to Su Yunji's. Let's see if your superiors will turn a blind eye to your little affair. Chen Yufeng was furious. He stood up and said, do you really have to push this to the point where we all go down together? I nodded. Yes, I'm going to burn this whole thing down, even if it takes me with it. I looked past Chen Yufeng at Su Yunji, smiling sweetly. Sister-in-law, if your audience found out how intimately you've been playing around with your husband's brother in private, what do you think they'd say? And your colleagues and superiors, do you think the image you've carefully built would hold up? People would be calling you all sorts of names behind your back. Su Yunji's eyes were filled with terror. Timidly, she tugged at Chen Yufeng's inside-out sweater and called out weakly, Yufeng. Chen Yufeng ran his fingers through his hair in agitation, his face a picture of defeat. After a long pause, he looked up at me and uttered, fine, I agree to the divorce. The divorce proceeded more smoothly than I had anticipated. There wasn't much property for us to divide. The apartment belongs to Chen Yufeng's work unit, so aside from our savings and the furniture inside, there's nothing else to divide. Chen's parents, having learned I was divorcing their son, came to see me once. They wanted to persuade me to give Chen Yufeng another chance. I simply said, the very thought of what happened that night makes me sick. The old couple flushed crimson with shame, unable to utter another word. On the day we moved out of the house, Chen Yufeng sat on a chair, utterly despondent, watching me carry out the furniture piece by piece, pots and pans, the bed from the bedroom, and the cabinet from the study. In the end, I even took the very chair he was sitting on. You could even sell this stuff at a flea market for some cash. Why should I let that despicable couple get off easy? Just think about my last life. Chen Yufeng's life insurance payout was in the tens of millions, and he didn't leave a single penny for me. And the blood, sweat, and money I poured into their daughter, that was far more than this. After moving all my things, I placed both keys from my bag on the windowsill. Then I slammed the door behind me. From that moment on, Chen Yufeng and I went our separate ways. 1 month after the divorce, my supervisor, Sister Zhang, pulled me aside for a private chat. She said our company would soon undergo restructuring, and more than a third of the staff would be laid off. A few years back, she had started a foreign trade company in the neighboring city and asked if I'd be willing to join her there. At that time, a wave of layoffs had already begun sweeping through many state-owned enterprises, with employees who had worked their entire careers finding themselves out of a job. With the market economy poised for robust growth, foreign trade is set to ride this powerful tailwind, so I agreed without a second thought. The day before I left for the neighboring city, I had a meal with a few close friends. During the meal, a friend brought up Chen Yufeng. They say he adopted a baby girl from the orphanage. All his friends thought he'd lost his mind, even though he was divorced. He was good-looking, had a solid job, and had no children of his own. Remarrying wouldn't have been a problem at all. Adopting a child now, what on earth was he thinking? I smiled and shrugged. Maybe that child is his own. My friends were first horrified, then had a sudden moment of understanding. Working for a private company is completely different from working for a state-owned enterprise. It took me several months to get used to the new work pace. I learned to communicate with clients via email, using an English dictionary to decipher the content of orders from international customers. I kept a close eye on developments in foreign markets. After work each day, I attended classes at an English language training institute. My days were packed with study and work, leaving me completely swamped and running around in circles. 2 years had passed by the time I was promoted from a foreign trade specialist to the manager of the entire department. Those 2 years marked the peak of the wave of layoffs. I heard that Chen Yufeng was among those laid off. This was a new development from my past life. Back then, not only was he not laid off, but after the purge of those holding sinecures, he quickly filled one of the vacant positions. He received promotions and pay raises in quick succession. Back then, he didn't have to worry about anything at home, so he could throw himself completely into his work. It wasn't until later that I learned from a friend why Chen Yufeng had been laid off. Not long after Chen Yufeng adopted the child, it was discovered that the child had complex congenital heart disease. However, unlike what I did in my previous life, he did not take the child to a top specialist at a Beijing hospital for the operation. To save on the surgical costs, he opted to have the procedure done at the local municipal people's hospital. However, the surgery's outcome was less than ideal. While it provided some relief, he still required long-term medication and was prone to frequent illnesses. The Chen parents had no idea this child belonged to Chen Yufeng and Su Yunji. Chen Yufeng, for his part, was too ashamed to admit it. Every day, seeing the sickly child who was draining their life savings filled the old couple with resentment. In the end, he just washed his hands of it and stopped helping with the child. Chen Yufeng was constantly taking time off work to look after the child. So when his company needed to downsize, he was among the first to be laid off. Su Yunji did not choose to stay with Chen Yufeng. They were completely neglectful of their child as well. She was only concerned with her own glamorous appearance and tranquil life. Eventually, the financial strain became too much for Chen Yufeng. He went to the theater troupe to find Su Yunji, asking if she could spare 10,000 yuan to help him through the immediate crisis. The medical expenses for the child are simply too high. To everyone's surprise, Su Yunji turned hostile on the spot. She berated Chen Yufeng for being a freeloader, saying that if he couldn't handle the responsibility, he should have kept his pants zipped in the first place. Chen Yufeng, flushed with shame and anger from her scolding, lashed out at Su Yunji without thinking. In front of everyone, he called her shameless, a whore, accusing her of trying to seduce him, her own brother-in-law. Even at her husband's funeral, she gave birth to the child only to abandon it at the doorstep of an orphanage, showing no care or concern whatsoever. Most of the people around were colleagues from Su Yunji's opera troupe. A single sentence stirred up a storm. All eyes turned to Su Yunji, accompanied by a wave of sighs and murmurs. Later, Chen Yufeng took to drinking heavily every day. In his drunken state, he would take his daughter to the theater troupe to demand money from Su Yunji, causing a scene if she refused. On 2 occasions, he even smashed props stored backstage. Not long after, Su Yunji was expelled from the troupe. Back then, I didn't go after them to the bitter end. I didn't expose all their dirty deeds to their workplace. Yet, they managed to ruin their own path with their own hands. Years later, I returned home to register our marriage with my fiancé. While out shopping with him, they spotted Chen Yufeng on the street, running a skewer stall. A little girl sat at a small table nearby, helping to thread gluten balls onto skewers. By my reckoning, the girl should be about 8 years old, yet she still looked no older than 5 or 6. Chen Yufeng saw me and froze for a moment. His gaze fell on the man I was holding onto, and a bitter smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Your husband? I nodded. Yes, we just got the marriage certificate this morning. A flicker of desolation passed through Chen Yufeng's eyes. His gaze fell on his daughter beside him. He beckoned to the girl. Jia, come here, let me introduce you. This is your Aunt Shu. I don't know what crossed his mind, but his words came out a bit strained. Jia looked at me timidly and said in a small voice, "Hello, Auntie." I smiled and nodded. Hello. After exchanging greetings, she sat back down at the table and resumed skewering the gluten puffs. Chen Yufeng looked at the child with heartache and said, "She has complex congenital heart disease, her health is poor, and Su Yunji doesn't take care of her. The doctors say it's uncertain whether she'll even make it to 20. Following his gaze, I glanced at the girl but said nothing. In my past life, I cherished her and held her dear, yet in the end, all I got in return was, she's not my real mother anyway. A child that isn't your own will never truly bond with you." Realizing he had said too much, Chen Yufeng quickly changed the subject. "I shouldn't be telling you all this, it's been so long. Please, order whatever you like, it's on me." As he turned to get ingredients from the glass cabinet, I finally noticed he had a slight limp in his right leg. "What happened to your leg?" I asked, curious. Chen Yufeng looked down at his leg, a pained expression crossing his face. "A couple of years ago, I was drinking heavily. One night, I passed out on the road and got run over by a 3-wheeler. Tears welled up in his eyes, his face etched with regret. "I had a good life, but I threw it all away with my stupid choices. I deserve everything that's happened to me," I said flatly. "What's done is done. There's no point in dwelling on the past." I glanced at my watch. I have to head to my in-laws for dinner soon. I'll take a rain check on those skewers. Chen Yufeng's hand, which was reaching for the ingredients, froze for a moment. A single tear fell. After that, I never saw Chen Yufeng again. The next time I heard anything about them was during a phone call with a friend. She told me that Chen Jiejie had passed away a few days ago. Just after turning 13, Chen Yufeng later took Chen Jiejie to Beijing for a consultation, but it was too late. The heart failure was too advanced, and surgery was no longer an option. The only solution was a heart transplant. But a heart transplant was far beyond the means of an ordinary family. Chen Yufeng's savings had long been exhausted on Chen Jiejie's medical treatments. In the end, they had no choice but to give up on treatment. Chen Jiejie, suffering from respiratory failure, passed away peacefully at home. Su Yunji brought a man with her to her daughter's funeral. Even as her daughter was being laid to rest, she was whispering and laughing with that man. Chen Yufeng had reached his breaking point. That evening, he lured Su Yunji out and then stabbed her in the abdomen with a sharp knife he carried. The floor was awash with blood. Half an hour later, Su Yunji was rushed to the hospital, while Chen Yufeng was taken away by the police. A friend told me it just happened the day before yesterday, and they weren't sure if Su Yunji had pulled through in the end. Hearing this, I let out a deep sigh. It's like a twisted fate where no one gets a happy ending. After hanging up, I was still a bit dazed. Just then, my son ran up to me with his toy car, saying, "Mommy, come play excavator with me." I looked at my sweet, adorable son and smiled gently. "Okay, Mommy's coming." I stood up and walked over to my son. Outside, the sunlight was perfect, and a gentle breeze stirred the sheer curtains, casting dappled patterns of light and shadow. Story 2, Suman, give your kidney to Ziki, she's dying. Gui Chen's eyes were bloodshot as he choked me. I laughed, a bitter laugh that brought tears to my eyes. In my past life, I was that foolish. He sweet-talked me into giving up my kidney, and I ended up dying in a hospital bed. Fine, Gui Chen, I'll give it to you. I looked at him, enunciating every word. I just hope you won't regret this. 1. The divorce declaration. Suman, what on earth are you making a scene about? Gui Chen's impatient voice came through the receiver, tinged with the hoarseness of a hangover and the faint, lingering scent of another woman's perfume. Clutching my phone, I stared out the window at the glaring sunlight. For a fleeting moment, I was convinced I was still trapped in that frigid, rainy night. That night, Yiziki drove her car into me, dragging my crippled leg. She leaned in and said with a smile, "Suman, you've lost, completely and utterly." Meanwhile, in the next room, my husband, Gui Chen, was holding the hand of the woman who did this to me, murmuring words of comfort. He said, "Ziki, don't be afraid, I'm here." How laughable, in his eyes. My life is probably worth less than a single strand of Yiziki's hair. I closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them again, I was met with the familiar sight of the apartment, my marital home with Gui Chen. Our blissful wedding photo still hung on the wall. In it, I was smiling like a naive fool who knew nothing of the world. Back then, I had no idea what a wretched scheme lay hidden behind this marriage. "Speak, Suman." Gui Chen's voice rose, his patience clearly worn thin. I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Gui Chen, I want a divorce." For a few seconds, there was nothing but dead silence on the other end of the line. Then came Gui Chen's cold sneer. "Suman, what game are you playing now? I told you, you'll get nothing but the title of Mrs. Gu." Yes, he's that arrogant, so sure that I'm hopelessly in love with him and can't live without him. And the old me, that was exactly who I was, a moth drawn to the flame, and I reveled in it. But now, I touch my lower abdomen, where a little life once grew. A life that was taken from me forever by Yiziki's meticulously planned accident. The pain is bone deep, gnawing at my soul day and night. "I'm not joking," I said, enunciating each word with perfect clarity. "Gui Chen, I've already signed the divorce papers. They're in the study. Look them over and sign if there are no issues." With that, I hung up the phone before he could even respond. I tossed the phone onto the sofa, where it landed with a dull thud. I stood up and walked over to the full-length mirror. The woman in the mirror was pale, with faint shadows under her eyes, yet her gaze was unnaturally bright. Sharp with a cold understanding that saw through everything, it was the light of rebirth, and the flame of vengeance. Yes, I had been reborn at a time before all the tragedies had occurred, or at least, before they had spiraled to their absolute worst. I remember. Today is the day Yiziki makes her triumphant return to the country. It's also the day Gui Chen, for the first time because of her, laid a hand on me. In my past life, I cried, I made a scene, I begged. All it earned me was his deepening disgust and the pitying, scornful looks of others, as if I were a clown. This time, I won't. Gui Chen, Yiziki, and all you who aided and abetted them, I will make you pay back every single thing you owe me, with interest." The sudden chime of the doorbell snapped me out of my thoughts. I knew it was him. He's here sooner than I expected. It seems my divorce announcement has caught him off guard. A faint smile touched my lips as I walked to the door and pulled it open. Gui Chen stood outside the door, his handsome face etched with anger. His brow was furrowed, and his gaze was so sharp it felt like it could pierce right through me. "Su-man, you'd better give me an explanation," he growled, his tone carrying its usual air of unquestionable authority. The truth revealed. An explanation for what? I looked at him calmly, even offering a faint smile, a smile that didn't reach my eyes and held a trace of mockery. "For why I've finally come to my senses and decided to let you go, and to free myself, or for why I've finally seen the truth about certain people and certain things." Gui Chen clearly hadn't expected me to react this way. In his mind, I was always docile, meek, and utterly compliant to his every word, even when he stayed out all night and his name was splashed across the tabloids alongside Yuzuki's. I would only ever ask, with red-rimmed eyes and timid caution, "Do you still love me?" After receiving his dismissive reply, I would quietly swallow all my grievances. He was stunned, his brow furrowing even deeper. "Have you lost your mind, or has someone been filling your head with nonsense again?" "Maybe." I stepped aside to let him in. "The divorce papers are in the study, you can take a look first." "Oh. And regarding the division of assets, I understand how hard you work for your money. I'm willing to walk away with nothing." At my words, Gui Chen's eyes grew even more suspicious, his face cold. He brushed past me and strode toward the study. I followed behind him at a leisurely pace. The air was thick with the lingering scent of that limited edition perfume Yuzuki always wore, pungent and nauseating. They must have had a very pleasant night, didn't they? So pleasant they didn't even have time to change their clothes. In the study, the divorce agreement lay quietly on the expensive rosewood desk. Gui Chen picked up those few sheets of paper and skimmed through them quickly. When he saw the section on asset division, where I had voluntarily relinquished all marital property, clearly stating I would leave with nothing, his pupils contracted sharply. He looked up at me sharply, his eyes filled with scrutiny and deeper suspicion. "Su-man, what exactly are you trying to do? Playing hard to get? Or is this your way of getting my attention?" "I want a divorce," I repeated, my tone flat and devoid of any emotion, as if stating a simple, established fact. "Why?" he pressed, his tone aggressive. "Because Ziki is back, Su-man. I've told you before, the place Ziki holds in my heart is something you can't compare to. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay in your lane." He was always so arrogant, so ready to trample on my dignity as if it were his right. He thinks the whole world revolves around him, that every single emotion I feel is because of him. "Yes, and no," I said flatly. "Yuzuki's return was indeed the trigger, but what truly drove me to despair was your bone-deep cruelty and indifference, Gui Chen, and your family's utterly repulsive scheming." At this time in my previous life, I was still unaware. This seemingly glorious marriage alliance was nothing but a ploy for the Gu family to exploit my Su family's overseas connections to salvage their failing business. I was merely a pawn to be used and discarded. "What do you mean by that?" Gui Chen's voice turned icy, laced with a hint of anger at being contradicted. "In other words," I met his gaze, my eyes resolute and icy. "Gui Chen, I have no lingering feelings for you left. Divorce is my only demand now. As for the reason, you know perfectly well. I don't need to spell it out." He seemed stunned by my look, slamming the divorce papers onto the table with a loud smack. "Su-man, don't push your luck," he roared. "My marriage is not something you can just end on a whim. Forget it." "Oh, is that so?" I arched an eyebrow, a hint of mockery in my tone. "Then what's your plan? Keep dragging this out, spend your days cozying up to your pure, untainted white moonlight, then come home at night and give me the cold shoulder?" "Gui Chen, aren't you exhausted?" "I'm exhausted for you." "Oh, and a friendly reminder, bigamy is a crime." Those words pierced Gui Chen's heart like venom-dipped daggers. His face turned ashen, his chest heaving violently. He was clearly furious. Just then, his phone rang. The name Ziki flashed on the screen, glaring like a harsh light. He glanced at the caller ID, and his eyes instantly softened, even holding a trace of imperceptible nervousness and tenderness, a stark contrast to the irritation he showed me. He didn't even try to hide it from me, answering the call right in front of me. His voice was dripping with tenderness. "Hello, Ziki. Yes, I'm on my way. Don't worry, I'm here for you." "Okay, wait for me." After hanging up, he didn't so much as glance my way. He grabbed his car keys and headed for the door as if I were thin air. At the doorway, he seemed to remember something. He stopped, turned back, and said to me coldly, "Sumin, don't even think about divorce. I won't agree to it, and stop playing these pathetic games, they only make me despise you more." With that, he walked out without a backward glance, the door slammed shut with a deafening crash, the force of it rattling the wedding portrait on the wall. I stood rooted to the spot, watching the closed door, a smile spreading across my lips that held a hint of bloodthirsty satisfaction. Gui Chen. Do you really think I can't get a divorce just because you refuse? How naive. What I couldn't obtain in my past life, I'll make you beg on your knees for me to take in this one. Just you wait, the real show is only just beginning. I walked out onto the balcony and watched Gui Chen's car speed away in a cloud of dust. He was driving so fast, no doubt in a hurry to see the one he truly loves. It's fine, I'm in no rush. I have all the time in the world to play this game with you. In this life, I won't be like some bitter, neglected wife anymore, waiting in an empty house for a man who doesn't love me. I will live my own life and make those who have wronged me pay the price they deserve. First, I need to gather evidence of how your Gu family schemed against my Su family all those years ago. 3. Reunion and confrontation. Gui Chen left, and another 3 days passed. For 3 whole days, not a single call or message. It was as if I had completely vanished from his world. I was glad for the peace and quiet. And I used the time to focus on my own affairs. First, I contacted the top divorce lawyer in our circles, the ace attorney, Mr. Zhang. In my past life, I had also hired him, but back then, I was too disheartened and just wanted a quick escape, so I failed to fight for many of my rights. This time, I consulted him in detail about divorce proceedings. I also told him about the preliminary evidence I had gathered regarding Gui Chen's marital infidelity, as well as my suspicions about potential commercial fraud behind the Gu family's marriage alliance with me. After hearing my account, Lawyer Zhang's gaze turned sharp. "Mrs. Gu," he said, "if it can be proven that the Gu family's marriage alliance with you was indeed based on fraud, and if you can provide substantial evidence of Mr. Gu's marital misconduct, you will be in a very strong position when it comes to the division of assets." I know, I nodded. "I'll do my best to gather the relevant evidence. I don't want the Gu family's dirty money, but I need them to pay for what they've done. In my past life, I left with nothing. In this life, why should I let that despicable couple and their filthy family get off easy?" Next, I began to look for a way out for myself, or rather, to reclaim my own life. All these years, for Gui Chen, I gave up my beloved career in jewelry design, content to be the gentle and virtuous Mrs. Gu behind the scenes, navigating social circles for him and attending to his every need in life. Looking back now, it was utterly foolish to squander my talent and youth on an ungrateful wretch. Fortunately, I majored in jewelry design in university and even won a few international awards, gaining some recognition in the field. It's just that after marriage, I gradually faded into the background. I dug out my old design sketches, those dreams left to gather dust on a high shelf, and they still sparkled brilliantly. I reached out to a few senior colleagues in the industry who had once expressed admiration for my work and sent them my latest designs. Perhaps I can start over, using my own 2 hands to build a future that is truly mine. That afternoon, I was at home sorting through my long-neglected design drafts and competition certificates when the doorbell suddenly rang. I thought it was Gui Chen returning. A cold sneer formed in my heart. Had he finally decided to show his face? I walked over to answer the door. Standing outside, however, was someone both unexpected and yet, in a way, entirely predictable. Yiziki. She was dressed in a pristine white Chanel dress from the latest collection, which made her look like an untainted white lotus, with delicate makeup and soft, flowing waves in her hair. She appeared gentle and harmless, yet a faint glimmer of smugness and provocation lurked in her eyes. But I knew all too well the venomous and greedy heart that lay beneath that pitiful, innocent facade. "Sister Suman, may I come in and sit for a while?" she asked softly, her voice a gentle murmur. Her eyes held just the right amount of timidity and innocence, as if I were the villain who might harm her. Had I not experienced her ruthless tactics in my past life, I might have truly been fooled by her masterful performance. "Can I help you, Miss Shi?" I blocked the doorway, making no move to let her in, my tone distant and cold. A flicker of awkwardness crossed Yiziki's face, but it was quickly replaced by her signature look of wide-eyed innocence. "Sister Sumin, I know you're angry about me and Ichen, but Ichen and I, we're truly in love. Matters of the heart are so hard to control." "Truly in love?" I let out a soft, incredulous laugh, as if I'd just heard the most absurd joke. "Miss Shi, is your version of true love brazenly inserting yourself into someone else's marriage, or perhaps your true feelings are more for the Gu family's wealth and status?" My words were merciless, a sharp blade slicing through her facade of virtue. The color instantly drained from Yuzuki's face. She bit her lower lip, her eyes instantly welling up with tears, looking utterly heartbroken as if she had suffered a grave injustice. Sister Sumin, how can you say that about me? I knew Ichen before you did. If I hadn't been forced to go abroad for further studies back then, the one standing by Ichen's side should be me. It was you. You stole everything that was rightfully mine. By the end, a trace of venom had crept into her tone. This same twisted narrative again. In my past life, it was with this very story that she drove me to madness and made Gu Ichen despise me even more. Thinking I was being unreasonable and petty, Mishi, I cut her off, my voice icy. There are no what-ifs about the past. The fact is, Gu Ichen is my lawful husband, and you are the third party disrupting our marriage. As for your accusation of theft, I'd like to ask, were you really forced to go abroad back then, or was it because of some shady business that you had to leave for a while? My pointed remark made Yuzuki's face turn even uglier. I'm not, Yuzuki retorted urgently, her voice turning shrill. Ichen doesn't love you at all. The one he loves is me. Sister Suman, I'm begging you, please let us be together. Let Ichen go, and let yourself go too. Clinging to the title of Mrs. Gu like this will only make all three of us miserable. As she spoke, she even reached out to take my hand, putting on an act of sisterly affection and heartfelt sincerity. I recoiled in disgust, avoiding her touch, my gaze as cold as frost. Let you off, I sneered. Yuzuki, what gives you the right to say that to me? When you ran me over with your car, caused me to miscarry, and nearly crippled me, did you ever think of letting me off? When you and Gu Ichen conspired to swindle my Su family's fortune, did that thought ever cross your mind? At these words, the color completely drained from Yuzuki's face, the fragility and timidity in her eyes vanished in an instant, replaced by a flicker of unconcealable panic and venom. You, what nonsense are you spouting? When did I ever hit you with a car? What Su family fortune? I don't understand, she flatly denied, though her eyes darted away evasively. I looked at her, my gaze icy and sharp, as if it could pierce through all her pretenses. Yuzuki, drop the act. Did you really think you covered your tracks perfectly? The truth always comes out. In my past life, I had no proof and could only watch you twist the facts. But did you really think I'd be that foolish again in this life? At that very moment, the familiar sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, steady and firm. It was Gu Ichen. Seeing me and Yuzuki in a standoff at the doorway, his brow furrowed instantly, a flicker of displeasure in his eyes. The calm before the storm. What's going on here? Gu Ichen's voice was laced with clear displeasure and a barely perceptible thread of tension. He strode quickly to Yuzuki's side, instinctively shielding her behind him as he fixed me with a wary gaze. As if I were the villain who would cause an unreasonable scene and harm the person he loved. This scene felt all too familiar. In my past life, he had done this very thing, countless times, placing Yuzuki behind him and using the most hurtful words to accuse me. Seizing the opportunity, Yuzuki immediately melted against Gu Ichen, her voice trembling with tears that fell like a broken string of pearls. Ichen, I just wanted to explain things properly to Sister Suman. To clear up any misunderstanding, but she doesn't believe me. She said I bumped into her, that we're scheming against the Su family. I really didn't. As she spoke, she continued to cry pitifully, her shoulders trembling slightly. She looked utterly wretched, her performance worthy of an Oscar. Gu Ichen's face darkened instantly. The look he gave me was full of reproach and profound disappointment. As if I had committed some unforgivable sin. Suman, that's enough. Ziki came here with good intentions to clear the air, and this is how you treat her. How can you be so malicious? He snapped harshly, each word lashing at my heart like a whip. Good intentions, I scoffed, meeting his furious gaze without a trace of fear. Gu Ichen, which eye of yours saw her good intentions? She came here to gloat and pressure me into a divorce, so she can rightfully take my place as Mrs. Gu, didn't she? And as for being malicious, compared to the filthy things some people have done, my blunt words probably don't even come close. Gu Ichen was rendered speechless, his chest heaving violently, his handsome features contorted with rage. Brother Ichen, please don't be angry. Yuzuki quickly grabbed Gu Ichen's arm, pleading in her signature, honey-sweet voice that could melt a heart of stone. Sister Sumin might just be in a bad mood, a momentary lapse in judgment. Please don't hold it against her. I believe this isn't who Sister Sumin really is. Her act of feigned magnanimity and understanding only made me look more like an unreasonable, petty shrew throwing a tantrum. What a brilliant move. Gu Ichen took a deep breath, seemingly trying to suppress the fury in his heart, and said to me, Sumin, Ziki isn't well. Don't provoke her with such vicious words anymore. Whatever this is about, we'll discuss it later. If you still care about the Gu family's reputation, behave yourself. With that, he moved to support the teetering Yiziki as they left, as if looking at me for a second longer would soil his eyes. Wait, I called out to them. My voice was low, but carried an unmistakable chill. Gu Chen turned back impatiently, his brow furrowed. What more do you want, Suman? My patience has its limits. I walked up to them, my gaze passing over Gu Chen to lock directly onto the tear-streaked face behind him. I spoke slowly, enunciating each word. Yiziki. I don't care what sordid little affair you have with Gu Chen, and I don't care how deeply you think you're in love, but I'm warning you, stay away from me, don't show your face around me again, and don't interfere in my life. Otherwise, don't blame me for what happens next. If certain things come to light, it won't be good for anyone. Do you understand? My eyes were icy, my tone leaving no room for argument and laced with a clear threat. Intimidated by my imposing presence, Yiziki instinctively shrank behind Gu Chen, a flicker of fear flashing in her eyes. Gu Chen's expression darkened further. He felt his authority was being challenged like never before. Suman, you're being utterly unreasonable, snapping at people like a rabid dog, he roared. Ziki is my guest. What gives you the right to throw her out? This is not your house to rule, your guest, I sneered, sweeping my gaze around this home that was once filled with my heart and soul. Gu Chen. Have you forgotten, this is my home, the legally recognized marital property. I have every right to decide who stays and who gets the hell out. And as for you, if you insist on defending this homewrecker, then you can both get out. You. Gu Chen trembled with rage, his hand shooting up as if to strike me. I didn't flinch, I just stared back at him coldly, my eyes brimming with contempt and defiance. I knew he wouldn't dare, not now. At least, not in front of Yiziki. Not when he still needed to cling to his pathetic gentlemanly facade and the Gu family's reputation. Sure enough, his hand froze mid-air, the veins on its back bulging. Seeing this, a flicker of smug satisfaction flashed in Yiziki's eyes, but she quickly grabbed his arm, tears welling up as she pleaded. Ichen, let it go, let's just leave. I don't want to cause trouble between you and your wife because of me. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come. Gu Chen shot me a venomous glare, his eyes promising to tear me apart. Then, with utmost care, he supported the frail and helpless Yiziki and walked away without a backward glance, as if fleeing a plague-stricken land. Watching their pitiful figures retreat together, the curve of my smile grew wider and wider, laced with a cold, bitter satisfaction. Gu Chen, Yiziki, this is only the beginning. The pain and humiliation you've inflicted on me, I will return to you 100-fold. I shut the door, sealing out the nauseating stench from outside. Back in the study, I switched on the miniature voice recorder I had prepared earlier. Every word of their conversation had been captured with perfect clarity, as lawyer Zhang had explained. While this wouldn't serve as direct evidence, it could be used as supporting material to demonstrate the improper relationship between Gu Chen and Yiziki, and the psychological pressure they were exerting on me. I saved the audio file and sent it to lawyer Zhang. Gu Chen didn't come back in the following days. Yiziki didn't show up again either. I was glad for the peace and quiet, and focused on my own affairs. Besides jewelry design, I also began investigating the truth behind the Gu family's marriage alliance with the Su family back then, as well as their crucial overseas project. In my previous life, that project later suffered a major failure, directly leading to the Gu family's decline. In this life, I will make sure it delivers a fatal blow to the Gu family in a far more devastating way. At the most critical moment, 5. The truth about the car accident. I was buried in a pile of the Gu group's early financial statements and project documents, trying to uncover the specific details of how they had exploited my Su family's overseas channels back then. When the phone rang, it was an unknown number, but I had a feeling. When I answered, a voice came through the line, old, frail, yet still laced with a familiar sharpness. Is that Suman? I sneered inwardly, but kept my face perfectly neutral. Mother, what can I do for you? That's right, it was my dear mother-in-law, Gu Chen's mother, Lin Huifeng. Suman, you and Chen, have you had a fight? A rather serious one, it seems. On the other end of the line, my mother-in-law's voice held a note of cautious probing, a far cry from the domineering old woman I remembered who always ordered me around. It seemed Gu Chen or Yiziki had complained about me to her, or perhaps, Gu Chen had finally told her about my intention to divorce. Mom, if you have something to say, please just say it directly. I didn't want to beat around the bush with her. Ah, my mother-in-law sighed, her tone suddenly turning earnest and grave. Chen, that child has always been stubborn since he was little, and his temper isn't the best. For a married couple, A spat at the head of the bed is made up by the foot of it. Just talk things out properly. Don't be so quick to mention divorce. It hurts the relationship so much. Our Gu family simply can't afford that kind of scandal. From her tone, it was clear she knew about the divorce dispute between Gu Yichen and me. And she was still harping on about the Gu family's reputation. Mom. It's not as simple as a quarrel between Gu Yichen and me, I said calmly. There's no love left between us. Forcing us to stay together would be torture for everyone. Nonsense. My mother-in-law's tone suddenly turned sharp, revealing her usual domineering nature. You haven't been married that long. How can there be no love? I think you're just being unreasonable. Suman, let me tell you. There is no precedent for divorce in the Gu family. Don't even think about it. You'd better drop this idea right now and behave yourself as Mrs. Gu. There it was, her true colors showing. She wasn't here to mediate at all, but to pressure and warn me. Mom, this is between Gu Yichen and me. We'll handle it ourselves. There's no need for you to worry about it. I didn't want to waste my breath arguing with her. I knew it was pointless trying to reason with someone so utterly self-centered. Handle it yourselves. What exactly are you capable of handling? My mother-in-law's tone dripped with scorn and contempt. Suman, I know you have a problem with Ziki, thinking she stole Yichen away, but Ziki is in poor health, and she's a sweet, innocent girl. She and Yichen have been close since they were children. As her sister-in-law, can't you be more magnanimous and understanding? Yichen, he just pities her. That's why he takes extra care of her. Stop picking on her all the time. It makes you look so petty, sweet and innocent. Pities her. I was so infuriated by her shameless, twisted logic that I almost laughed out loud. If Yiziki is innocent and kind, then there are no wicked women left in this world. Mom, I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my voice steady, though the icy chill in my tone was unmistakable. If you called just to sing the praises of that homewrecker Yiziki and, on the side, lecture me, your lawful daughter-in-law, about not being magnanimous enough, then I think we have nothing more to discuss. You'd be better off focusing on your precious son's health. Don't let some outsider turn your own family upside down. What is this attitude? My mother-in-law's temper flared completely, her voice sharp and grating. Suman, I am your mother-in-law. Is that any way to speak to me? Don't you forget, you're living off the Gu family, eating their food, living under their roof. Mark my words, with one word from me, I can make Yichen utterly despise you. Have you thrown out with nothing? And kicked out of the Gu household for good? Oh, really? I sneered, my voice dripping with contempt. Well, why don't you give it a try? See if your darling son still dances to your tune, and see if I, Suman, am such an easy target. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, I've already signed the divorce papers. I'm just waiting for Gu Yichen to put his signature on them. As for leaving with nothing, I've made it perfectly clear. I don't want a single penny from your precious Gu family. With that, I hung up the phone. Listening to another word would have felt like sullying my ears. Hearing the dial tone in my phone, I felt nothing but grim satisfaction. In my past life, I was too considerate of my mother-in-law's feelings, constantly yielding to her. That only made her push her luck. She teamed up with Yiziki to corner me, until even the last memento from my parents, my shares in the Sioux group, were swindled away from me. In this life, I won't make the same mistake again. Every last one of the Gu family, from top to bottom, is rotten to the core. Just as I was thinking, my phone rang again. The name Gu Yichen flashed on the screen. He must have gotten that call from his mother, the one where she poured fuel on the fire, and now he's coming to demand an explanation. A faint smirk touched my lips as I leisurely answered the call, ready to savor his impotent rage. Suman, what the hell did you say to my mother? Gu Yichen's roar blasted through the phone the moment the call connected, making my ears ring. I was just telling the truth, I replied flatly, my tone as calm and still as a deep pool of water. The truth. I think you're deliberately trying to kill my mother with anger. Her health is fragile. If anything happens to her, you'll pay for it. Gu Yichen was furious, his voice thick with menace. Make me pay, I scoffed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Gu Yichen. What else can you do besides threaten me? If you have the guts, come back right now and sign the divorce papers with me. Wouldn't it be better for us to make a clean break and go our separate ways? Then you can openly be with your pure and kind Ziki. No more sneaking around, in your dreams. Gu Yichen growled through gritted teeth. Suman. Let me make this perfectly clear, I will never, ever agree to a divorce. You can forget about it right now. The position of Mrs. Gu is yours, whether you want it or not. You will remain my wife. Is that so? I let out a light, confident laugh. Gu Yichen, don't be so sure of yourself. We'll see about that. Let's see who ends up begging whom for the divorce. With that, I hung up on him once more, without a moment's hesitation. With a man this arrogant, you can't afford to be nice. The more submissive you are, the more he'll look down on you, but show some backbone, and he'll start to take you seriously, even fear you a little. The following days were unexpectedly quiet. Gui-chen didn't contact me again, and Yiziki and my mother-in-law seemed to have vanished into thin air. I was glad for the peace and quiet, and threw myself wholeheartedly into my plan. Things were progressing smoothly with the lawyer. They had already gathered some indirect evidence of Gui-chen's marital infidelity, along with records of his multiple large-sum transfers to Yiziki. While it might not be enough to leave him with nothing, it would at least give me the upper hand in the divorce proceedings and tarnish his reputation. My jewelry design career was finally gaining momentum. A senior colleague I had worked with before saw my sketches and was deeply impressed. She offered to introduce me to the internationally renowned luxury jewelry house, Orly, which was actively seeking promising new talent. Life seemed to be moving in a positive direction, yet, I knew all too well that the calm before the storm is often the most deceptive. It was time to stir up the murky waters of the Gu family. That day, I was at home revising a risk assessment report on the Gu Group's overseas projects, compiled from memories of my past life and investigations in this one. I was preparing to give the Gu family a little surprise at the opportune moment. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was the hospital. On the other end of the line, the nurse frantically told me that Gui-chen had been in a car accident, was in critical care, and that I needed to get there immediately. I stood there, phone in hand, frozen. Gui-chen, in a car accident. How could this happen so suddenly? Could it be Yiziki? The thought flashed through my mind, but I dismissed it immediately. As malicious as she is, she's not that stupid. If Gui-chen died, it would do her no good whatsoever. She wouldn't get a single penny of the Gu family fortune. Then who was it? Or was it just an accident? I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my coat and rushed out the door. No matter how much bad blood there is between Gui-chen and me, he is still my legal husband. By all rights, I should go to the hospital. More importantly, I need to see for myself whether this car accident will throw a wrench in my plans. The price of crippling. When I hurried to the hospital, a familiar figure was sitting on a bench outside the operating room, weeping into her hands. It was Yiziki. She was wearing a thin silk dress, haphazardly draped with a man's suit jacket, clearly Gui-chen's. Her face was deathly pale, her hair disheveled, and her delicate makeup was smeared by tears. She looked utterly pitiful and heartbreaking. When she saw me, a flicker of barely perceptible panic and guilt passed through her eyes, but she quickly composed herself, forcing herself to stand up. She walked towards me, her voice thick with congestion and hoarseness. "Sister Suman, you're here." Her voice was raspy, bearing the traces of recent tears. "How is Gui-chen?" I ignored her affected display and cut straight to the point, my gaze sharp and scrutinizing as I looked her over. "The doctors are still trying to save him. It's not looking good. He lost a lot of blood." As Yiziki spoke, her eyes reddened again. She looked on the verge of tears, her body swaying unsteadily as if she might faint at any moment. I frowned, saying nothing, but a cold sneer formed in my heart. "Keep up the act. Just keep it up." Just then, the light over the operating room went out. Several doctors in green scrubs emerged, removing their masks, their expressions grave and weary. Yiziki and I stepped forward simultaneously. "Doctor. How is he? How is Chen?" Yiziki rushed to the front of the doctor, her voice trembling and choked with tears as she asked urgently. The doctor glanced at us, his gaze lingering on me for a few extra seconds as if trying to determine who the family was, then sighed. "The patient lost a significant amount of blood. He has 3 broken ribs, one of which nearly punctured a lung. Well, he's out of immediate danger for now." "But what? Doctor, please tell us." Yiziki grabbed the doctor's arm, her emotions running high. "But his legs," the doctor began with difficulty, his tone grave. "Due to the severe impact, the nerve damage is extensive, combined with some delays during transport. I'm afraid he won't be able to walk again. My legs, I can't stand up. Am I crippled?" My mind went blank with a deafening roar. How could this happen? In my past life, Gui-chen was cold and heartless towards me, but he was always healthy and full of life. He even went on to marry Yiziki in a grand, celebrated ceremony after my death. How could he possibly be crippled in this life? Could it be that my rebirth, like a butterfly effect, has altered the course of certain events? No, impossible. Yiziki screamed, her composure completely shattered. "Doctor, you're lying to me. How could Brother Chen be crippled? He's such a proud man. You must be lying. You're a quack." As she spoke, she lunged forward to grab and tear at the doctor's clothes. I grabbed her just in time, my voice icy cold. "Yiziki, get a hold of yourself. This is a hospital. How can I be calm?" Yiziki shook off my hand and shrieked at me hysterically. Brother Ichen got hurt because of me. It's all my fault. If he's crippled, how can I ever face him? How can I ever make it up to him? He got hurt because of her. My mind raced, instantly latching onto the crucial detail in her words. I turned to Yiziki, my gaze sharp as a blade. What are you implying? What exactly happened with Gu Ichen's car accident? You'd better explain yourself. Clearly, Yiziki seemed to realize her slip of the tongue. Her eyes darted nervously as she stammered. It's nothing. It's just, he was on his way to see me, and he had an accident. Yiziki, I pressed, my tone hardening as I closed in. You'd better think very carefully about what you say next. If you had anything to do with what happened to Gu Ichen, I will make you pay. Under my relentless interrogation and overwhelming presence, Yiziki finally cracked. Haltingly, she began to recount the events. As it turned out, tonight, Yiziki had pulled the same old trick again. She called Gu Ichen for help, falsely claiming she was having a heart attack and couldn't breathe. Upon receiving the call, Gu Ichen was frantic with worry. He immediately dropped everything and drove straight to Yiziki's apartment. Anxious about her supposed condition, he sped and ran red lights the whole way. At a blind corner with no surveillance, he swerved violently to avoid a scooter that suddenly darted out. He lost control of the car, which crashed into the roadside guardrail, resulting in a tragic accident. After hearing Yiziki's account, I was simply overcome with a sense of absurdity and fury. Not again, another heart attack. In my past life. Yiziki used this foolproof excuse time and again to summon Gu Ichen away from me, creating countless hero saves the damsel moments for them. Who would have thought that in this life, she'd pull the same trick, nearly costing Gu Ichen his life and leaving him permanently disabled. That woman is nothing but a walking jinx, a bona fide femme fatale. I stared at Yiziki's pale, terrified face, my gaze as cold as ice. Yiziki, I said, if anything serious happens to Gu Ichen, or if he wakes up and learns the truth, do you really think he'll look at you the same way? Your little seduction scheme has come at a terrible price. My words and my stare frightened Yiziki. She flinched, her lips trembling, not daring to utter another word. Just then, Gu Ichen's parents, my in-laws, arrived in a hurry, having heard the news. Seeing her son lying unconscious in the ICU, his legs swathed in bandages and his body connected to tubes, Gu's mother, Lin Huifeng, fainted on the spot from sheer grief. Though Gu Mingyuan, Gu Ichen's father, tried hard to maintain his composure, his red-rimmed eyes and slightly trembling hands betrayed the grief and panic within. For a moment, the entire corridor was thick with an atmosphere of sorrow, despair, and suffocating gloom. I stood to the side, watching the chaotic and sorrowful scene before me with a cold eye. My heart was a tumult of mixed emotions, yet sympathy was conspicuously absent. Gu Ichen. So you've finally met your fate. Could this be karma coming around a little too quickly? But why is it that I can't feel even a shred of happiness in my heart? There's even a trace of an indescribable heaviness and agitation. Perhaps it's because I know that Gu Ichen ended up like this, more or less, because of my rebirth. If I hadn't been reborn, if I hadn't used divorce to provoke him, he might not have rushed to find Yiziki so desperately, and this car accident might never have happened. This realization feels suffocating. My plan for revenge seems to have been thrown off its intended course because of this unforeseen event. I take a deep breath, trying to push down these chaotic thoughts. This is no time for such thoughts. The immediate priority is to clean up this mess and ensure my plans proceed without a hitch. Gu Ichen is crippled, and the Gu family's world has half collapsed. This might actually work to my advantage for what comes next. 7 on the brink. Gu Ichen spent a full 2 weeks in the ICU, receiving multiple critical condition notices before he was finally pulled back from death's door and transferred to a regular ward. The first thing he asked for upon waking was to see Yiziki. The depth of his devotion was truly heart-wrenching. Though Gu's mother, Lin Huifeng, was heartbroken for her son, the terrifying brush with death, where she nearly had to bury her own child, left her seething with hatred for Yiziki, that seductress and jinx. Naturally, she refused to let her set foot in the hospital room easily. Yiziki stood weeping outside the room, her face streaked with tears like rain on pear blossoms, putting on a tragic display of doomed love. Her scene ensured everyone on the entire floor learned of the touching tale of how the Gu family's eldest son had nearly lost his life, throwing caution to the wind for his beloved. In the end, it was only after Gu Ichen threw a fit from his sickbed, even threatening to starve himself, that his mother, filled with bitter reluctance, finally allowed Yiziki to enter. What the two discussed behind the closed door of the hospital room remained a mystery to outsiders. All I know is that from that day on, Yiziki moved into the hospital's family care room under the pretense of taking care of Gu Ichen. she stayed by his side almost constantly, fussing over his every need, fetching him tea and water, more attentive than a professional nurse. Meanwhile, I, his lawful wife, became the superfluous one, an awkward outsider. Gu Yichen's parents, Gu Mingyuan and Lin Huifeng, still treated me coldly, their eyes even held a trace of blame, as if my unreasonable behavior had indirectly caused their son's misfortune. However, with Gu Yichen still not fully recovered, they didn't dare to push me too far. They were terrified I might recklessly file for divorce, adding insult to injury and making the Gu family the laughingstock of high society. Still, both overtly and covertly, they hinted that I should consider the bigger picture. They wanted me to step up and take responsibility for caring for Gu Yichen, while turning a blind eye to Yiziki's presence. They even hoped I would voluntarily offer a divorce, clearing the way for Yiziki to comfort their son's wounded heart. I have no intention of giving them what they want. Gu Yichen, you still owe me a debt. This little drama of ours is far from over. That day, as usual, I went to the hospital to deliver the soup I had personally prepared for Gu Yichen. It was part of my duty as Mrs. Gu, a way to silence the Gu family's gossip, and, more importantly, a convenient excuse to keep an eye on their movements. Just as I reached the door of the hospital room, I heard Yiziki's sickly sweet voice from inside, dripping with deliberate gentleness and sycophancy. Yichen ji, open up. I had the housekeeper simmer this congee all morning just for you. It's so soft and delicious. I pushed open the slightly ajar door and saw Yiziki sitting by the bedside. She was holding a bowl of what looked like the blandest plain congee, carefully scooping a spoonful, blowing on it gently, and then offering it to Gu Yichen's lips. The two of them were intimately close, completely oblivious to anyone else, as if they were a long-married couple deeply in love. When Gu Yichen saw me enter, his brow instinctively furrowed. A flicker of unease and awkwardness passed through his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by impatience. Yiziki, meanwhile, acted like a startled rabbit. She hurriedly put down the bowl in her hands, rose to her feet with visible discomfort, and timidly called out, "Sister Suman, you're here." I ignored the nauseating display of deep affection between them, walking straight to the bedside. I thumped the thermal lunchbox in my hand down onto the nightstand, making a considerable noise. "I made you some soft-shell turtle soup with premium wild ginseng," I said flatly, my tone devoid of any emotion. "It's good for your recovery." Gu Yichen looked at me, his expression complicated. He opened his mouth as if to say something. "Yichen ji," Yiziki suddenly cut in with a sickly sweet voice, laced with a hint of feigned grievance and pride. "Don't you trust me to take good care of you, Sister Suman? I know you're worried about him, but don't worry, I'll be by his side day and night, tending to him without rest. I won't let him suffer the slightest bit." Her utterly two-faced performance made me sick to my stomach. I really wanted to dump that bowl of turtle soup right on her hypocritical face. "Mishi," I said coldly, my gaze like shards of ice. "Have you forgotten that I am Gu Yichen's lawful wife? Taking care of him is my responsibility and duty. It's not your place, an outsider with no clear standing, to come here and put on this show of concern. Who exactly are you performing for?" "I am not an outsider," Yiziki retorted urgently, her voice rising. "Yichen and I are truly in love. If you hadn't taken advantage of my time abroad and used underhanded tricks to marry him, I would be the one standing here right now." "If I hadn't what?" I arched an eyebrow, a note of mockery in my tone. "If it weren't for me, you two could be together openly and properly. Is that it?" "Yiziki, your talent for twisting the truth is truly reaching new heights. Who was it that shamelessly clung to Gu Yichen back then? And who was it that, when my Su family was in trouble, joined forces with the Gu family to kick us while we were down? Have you forgotten all that? Exposed so mercilessly?" Yiziki's face flushed with alternating shades of anger and humiliation. With nowhere else to turn, she could only cast a pleading look towards Gu Yichen on the hospital bed, her eyes welling up with tears. Gu Yichen's face also turned grim. He looked at me, his voice hoarse and weak. "Suman, don't be like this. Ziki, she meant well. What happened back then is all in the past. Why can't you just let it go?" "Meant well," I sneered, my gaze sharp as a blade. "Gu Yichen, have you forgotten why you're lying here in the first place? If she hadn't called you out with that fake emergency, would you have gotten into that car accident? Would your legs be ruined? Is this your idea of meaning well? Nearly getting you killed and condemning you to a wheelchair for the rest of your life." My words were like sharp knives, mercilessly plunging into the hearts of Gu Yichen and Yiziki. Gu Yichen's face instantly drained of all color, turning as pale as paper. His eyes were filled with pain, regret, and a trace of unconcealed despair. He instinctively tried to move his numb legs, and the sheer helplessness of it nearly broke him. Yiziki shrieked like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Suman, that's a lie. Brother Ichen's car accident was just that, an accident. It had nothing to do with me. Don't you dare try to drive a wedge between us here. Nothing to do with you, I sneered, pressing forward step by step. Yiziki. Do you dare swear in front of Gu Ichen, if you hadn't repeatedly faked illness to play on his sympathy, making a fool out of him, would he have recklessly driven out in the middle of the night to find you? Do you dare say you haven't used and manipulated him at all? Do you dare claim you aren't after the Gu family's power and wealth? I didn't. I never did, Yiziki denied hysterically, tears gushing forth like a burst dam. I love Brother Ichen, how could I possibly use him? Everything I did was out of love for him, love. I looked at her face, twisted with agitation, my eyes filled with contempt and disdain. Your so-called love is cheap and venomous. For the sake of this love of yours, you can disregard others' lives, shamelessly destroy another person's family, and even push the one you claim to love into an abyss. Yiziki, someone like you is utterly unworthy of speaking about love. You only love yourself, you venomous witch. Yiziki trembled with rage, her words spilling out without thought as she raised her hand to strike my face. I didn't flinch, merely watching her with an icy stare, a glint of warning in my eyes. I knew she wouldn't dare, at least, not in front of Gu Ichen, not while she still needed his protection. Sure enough, her hand was caught midair by Gu Ichen from his sickbed. Enough, Gu Ichen growled, his voice hoarse and weary, yet carrying an undeniable authority. Stop this racket, out. All of you, get out. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot, his voice tinged with a desperate, almost pleading despair. Suman, I'm begging you, please, just stop talking. Alright, give me some peace. 8. The revenge begins. Watching Gu Ichen in this wretched, nearly broken state, a sudden, indescribable sense of grim satisfaction welled up inside me. There was a time when he was just as high and mighty, ordering me around and trampling my dignity underfoot. Now he lies in a hospital bed like a stray dog, barely able to move, reduced to begging for my pity in this pathetic way. How the tables have turned. Karma is a bitch, Gu Ichen, I said, looking at him, each word deliberate, clear, and ice-cold. So now you come begging. Did it ever cross your mind, when you hit me for Yiziki's sake, shoved me to the ground, and nearly made me lose our child, did it ever cross your mind, when you stood by and watched, doing nothing? As Yiziki drove her car straight at me, did it ever cross your mind, when your Gu family conspired with Yiziki to scheme against my Su family and seize the inheritance my parents left for me, that you would ever end up like this? My words landed like hammer blows, shattering Gu Ichen's heart and striking deep into the terrified soul of Yiziki, who stood pale-faced beside him. Gu Ichen's face instantly drained of all color, turning ashen, his lips trembled, and his eyes were filled with shock, agony, and utter disbelief. He clearly never expected me to know so many of the secrets he thought were so well hidden. Yiziki was scared out of her wits. She stumbled backward, nearly collapsing on the spot. Suman, you know everything. Gu Ichen forced the words out, his voice a hoarse, almost inaudible whisper. The truth always comes out in the end, I sneered. Gu Ichen, did you really think you'd covered all your tracks? Did you think I, Suman, was a complete fool? That I'd just stand by and let you manipulate me, let you sell me out and then thank you for the privilege? That's right, in my past life. It wasn't until just before I died that I stumbled upon the truth. Gu Ichen never married me out of some love at first sight fantasy, and certainly not out of love for me. He married me because the Su family controlled a crucial overseas business channel and possessed key connections my father had built, exactly what the Gu group, then hitting a development wall, desperately needed. The Gu family had it all planned from the very beginning. They saw me as a stepping stone, a useful tool. Once they leveraged the Su family's channels and connections to successfully expand overseas and solidify their domestic standing, I became nothing but an inconvenient pawn to be discarded. And Yiziki, she was merely their pawn, used to force me into a divorce, to make me voluntarily walk away with nothing, and to legitimize their seizure of the Su group shares under my name. How laughable that I was foolish enough to believe he truly loved me, that he was merely led astray by Yiziki later on. It turns out, from the very beginning to the end, it was all an elaborately orchestrated deception. Surprised, I stared at his face, twisted in shock, my gaze icy. Gu Ichen, did you think your acting was that convincing? Or did you believe I, Suman, was truly irredeemably stupid? I've long since uncovered every last one of the Gu family's dirty little secrets. I didn't. Suman, please listen to my explanation. It's not what you think. Gu Ichen struggled to speak, attempting to defend himself, his eyes filled with panic and fear. Enough, I cut him off sharply, unwilling to hear another word of his hypocritical excuses or lies. Gu Ichen, I don't want to hear another syllable from you. There's nothing left to say between us. I've already signed the divorce papers, and they've been notarized by my lawyer. Whenever you find the time, sign them, and we'll be completely finished. With that, I pulled the divorce papers, prepared in triplicate, and a thick stack of photocopied evidence from my bag. The documents detailed Gu Yichen's marital infidelity, his siphoning of our joint assets, and the Gu family's business fraud. I flung the whole lot onto his hospital bed, where they scattered across the pale sheets. Gu Yichen stared at the divorce agreement and the damning evidence that could ruin him. The light in his eyes died instantly, as if all his strength had been drained. A heavy, lifeless despair settled over him, making him look a decade older in a heartbeat. Yiziki watched, a flicker of barely concealed triumph in her eyes. If Gu Yichen and Su Man divorced, she could finally become the legitimate Mrs. Gu. But that glee was quickly replaced by stark terror as she registered the evidence. If this got out, the Gu family would be finished, and she would go down with them. She walked to the bedside, forcing a calm, gentle tone. Brother Yichen, don't get worked up. Your health is what matters. Sister Su Man is probably just speaking in anger. Any misunderstanding between a husband and wife can be cleared up with a good talk. This stuff. Sister Su Man must have been tricked. It's all fake. Gu Yichen said nothing, his gaze fixed on the divorce papers with a hollow, numb stare. I didn't look at them again. I turned and left the hospital room. The air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and despair, making me sick. Stepping outside, the sunlight was a bit harsh, yet it brought me a long-lost sense of relief. I took a deep breath, feeling as if a heavy stone that had weighed on my heart for years had finally been lifted. Gu Yichen, Yiziki, and the entire Gu family. Your retribution has only just begun. What comes next will make you understand the true meaning of a living hell. I immediately contacted lawyer Zhang, informing him of everything that happened at the hospital. I instructed him to prepare the necessary procedures to be executed the moment Gu Yichen signs the divorce papers. Should he refuse, we will file for divorce directly and make all the evidence public. Simultaneously, I anonymously sent that risk assessment report, which details the significant risks and quality defects in the Gu Group's overseas projects, to several prominent domestic financial media outlets, as well as to the group's key overseas partner. I know a much greater storm is about to break. 9. Retribution arrives. The crisis at the Gu Group hit faster and more violently than I had ever anticipated. That anonymous risk assessment report landed like a bombshell, sending shockwaves through the financial world. The report detailed a litany of regulatory violations, corner cutting, and serious quality defects in the Gu Group's crucial overseas project, backed by irrefutable photographic evidence and internal documents. In an instant, the Gu Group found itself at the center of a raging storm. Its stock price plummeted in response, hitting the daily down limit for several consecutive days. Business partners raised questions one after another, demanding a thorough investigation. Banks also began tightening credit and pressing the Gu Group to repay portions of their loans ahead of schedule. Gu Mingyuan, the father, was already distraught over his son's situation. Now, faced with this immense operational crisis and besieged from all sides, he was so enraged that he suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage and was rushed to the hospital. Although his life was saved, he was left partially paralyzed, with a facial droop, and unable to care for himself. His wife, Lin Huifeng, spent her days in tears. She had to care for her paralyzed husband in his hospital bed, comfort her disabled son in another room, and steel herself to deal with the banks demanding repayment and the furious shareholders at her door. She begged and pleaded everywhere, calling in every favor and connection she had. But no one was willing to lend a hand in this hour of need. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. When the wall collapses, everyone gives it a push. The fickleness of human relationships was never more apparent. Gu Yichen sat in his wheelchair, his legs paralyzed and numb, watching the negative news reports about the Gu Group on television. As he listened to his mother's desperate sobs, he was plunged into a deep abyss of despair and self-blame. He wanted to help, but was utterly powerless, forced to watch the family business he had once been so proud of crumble before his eyes. Just as the Gu family was overwhelmed and teetering on the brink, Yiziki, who had been constantly by Gu Yichen's side, playing the role of the devoted and loyal partner, chose that very moment to vanish from the hospital without a trace. She didn't just take all the valuable gifts Gu Yichen had given her, she also cleaned out the last remaining funds from his personal bank account. Several days later, Gu Yichen finally received a letter delivered by a messenger on Yiziki's behalf. In it, she wrote with tearful emotion, professing her deep love for him. She claimed she couldn't bear to see him suffer because of her. Nor did she want to be a burden to the Gu family, so she felt she had no choice but to leave. She concluded by wishing him a speedy recovery and hoping he would find true happiness. How utterly pathetic and laughable. Back then, she swore her undying love, vowing to stand by him forever, through thick and thin. But the moment the Gu family hit trouble, she immediately cut ties, absconded with the money, and vanished faster than anyone. And this is what she calls true love, so cheap it's downright appalling. Gu Yichen probably never imagined that the woman he cherished above all else would turn out to be such a heartless, ungrateful, greedy, and selfish creature. After reading the letter, he locked himself in his room for 3 days and nights without food or water. When he finally emerged, he was a broken man, haggard, with hollow eyes, looking as if he had aged a decade in an instant. All his former vigor and spirit were gone. Seeing her son in such a devastated state, Madame Gu's heart ached, but she was powerless to help. In desperation, she even swallowed her pride and came to me. With a voice choked with tears, she knelt down and begged. She pleaded with me to remember our past ties and to consider that Gu Yichen still deeply loved me, asking me to step in and help the Gu family through this crisis. She said that if I agreed to help, she would make Gu Yichen sign the divorce papers immediately and give me half of the Gu family's remaining assets. All she asked was that I save the family and protect her son. Looking at her face, which had aged rapidly from worry and despair, and into her bloodshot, pleading eyes, I felt an inexplicable surge of satisfaction. Mrs. Gu, I began, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. Do you remember how your family treated me, how you schemed against the Su family? Have you forgotten how you favored Yiziki, how you insulted me and forced me to leave with nothing? Now that the Gu family is in trouble, why on earth should I help? Do I look like a saint to you? Su man, I know we were wrong before. We were blind, we wronged you, we wronged the Su family, Mrs. Gu pleaded through tears, kowtowing repeatedly, but, I beg you, for Yichen's sake, he's in such a terrible state now, for the sake of the genuine affection he once had for you, please, have some mercy and help us. If you agree to help, I'll serve you like a slave, I'll do anything. Genuine affection for me. I let out a cold laugh, as if I'd heard the most absurd joke. Mrs. Gu, are you mistaken? Did Gu Yichen ever have genuine affection for me? He never loved me. The only things he ever loved were himself and your family's hollow wealth and status. As for serving me like a slave, I wouldn't dare. I'm afraid it would sully my home. With that, I ignored her continued pleas and curses and had security escort her out. I won't get involved in the Gu family's affairs. The predicament they find themselves in today is entirely of their own making, a just and deserved outcome. All I need to do is watch quietly as they march, step by step, toward their ruin, toward the ending they so richly deserve. After some time had passed, the Gu group finally buckled under the immense pressure of massive debts and a slew of scandals, formally announcing its bankruptcy and liquidation. All the real estate and luxury cars registered under the Gu family's name were seized by the court and auctioned off to repay their debts. Unable to bear the relentless blows, Gu Mingyuan's condition deteriorated. One late night, he passed away quietly in his sleep. Lin Huifeng, now with her disabled son Gu Yichen in tow, plummeted from the clouds into the mud. The once glamorous socialite was reduced to a destitute, homeless beggar, surviving on meager government aid and scavenging through trash. Their days were marked by hunger and constant displacement. As for Yiziki, who had absconded with the money, she wasted no time after leaving Gu Yichen, using her ill-gotten gains to reinvent herself. She quickly latched onto another tycoon, even wealthier and more powerful than the Gu family. She believed her beauty and cunning would once again secure her a life of dazzling luxury. What she likely hadn't anticipated was that this tycoon's wife was a formidable figure with deep connections and ruthless methods, a woman who harbored a particular hatred for homewreckers. Not long after, Yiziki was cornered in her apartment by the tycoon's wife and her entourage. She was publicly slapped, stripped naked, had compromising photos and videos taken of her, and then was discarded like trash onto the bustling city street. Those unspeakable photos and videos quickly spread across the entire internet. The once pure maiden who rose to fame on her looks was utterly disgraced, reduced to a public enemy that everyone despised, meeting a fate even more wretched than that of the Gu mother and son. It was supremely satisfying, a classic case of poetic justice, through a special channel. I had those wonderful videos and photos accidentally delivered to Gu Yichen, who was currently undergoing treatment in a psychiatric hospital. I wonder what he felt when he saw the woman he once loved so deeply end up in such a state. Was it satisfaction, or a sense of shared doom? 10. Rebirth from the ashes. That day, I was in the independent design studio that Auralie Jewelry had established specifically for me. reviewing the drafts for the latest season. Thanks to my novel and unique design concepts and precise grasp of market trends, several pieces of my jewelry were met with an enthusiastic market response upon their release, sales repeatedly hit new highs, and my reputation in the international jewelry design world soared as a result. My assistant, Xiao Chen, knocked and entered, informing me that a Mr. Gu in a wheelchair was waiting in the lobby downstairs and had asked to see me specifically. I frowned, understanding dawning on me. Yet I couldn't help feeling a flicker of surprise. Gui Chen, how did he find this place? What does he want with me? Could it be he's still clinging to false hopes, here to beg for a reconciliation, or maybe he's come to stand up for Yiziki? I set down the design draft in my hands, stood up, and said to Xiao Chen, let him come up. Have him wait for me in the reception room. Let's see what tricks he thinks he can pull off. Looking like that now, a few minutes later, I entered the reception room. Gui Chen sat alone in his wheelchair, his back to the door, gazing out at the bustling cityscape. He wore a cheap, faded t-shirt and jeans, his hair was unkempt, his face unshaven, and he was gaunt to the point of being skeletal. He looked utterly destitute and broken, a far cry from the lofty, high-spirited young master of the Gu family he once was. If not for the faintly recognizable, handsome bone structure of his face, I would hardly have known him. I walked over and sat down on the sofa opposite him, getting straight to the point with a detached tone. What is it, Mr. Gu? Gui Chen slowly turned his wheelchair to face me. An unnatural flush colored his cheeks, and his eyes were clouded, as if from drink or the ravages of illness. He looked at me, his gaze a tangled mess of emotions, remorse, resentment, anguish, and a trace of humble entreaty. Suman, he began, his voice hoarse, each word a struggle. Can we ever go back to how things were? Looking at his pitiful, pathetic state, I suddenly laughed, a laugh tinged with bitter irony. Go back to the way things were. Does he really think there's still a before for us? Does he think a flippant "let's go back" can just erase all the pain and hurt he caused me? Gui Chen, I said, my gaze as cold and sharp as a blade, my voice deceptively calm yet carrying a bone-chilling frost. Do you really think we can go back? What gives you the right? What right do you have left to say that to me? Stung by my look and tone, he lowered his head in anguish, his voice thick with a choked sob and utter despair. I know, I was wrong, I was blind, I hurt you, I failed you, but, Suman, I truly regret it, every single day since. I've been filled with regret for not cherishing you when I had the chance, regret for letting that bitch Yiziki cloud my judgment, regret, I scoffed, my voice dripping with disdain and mockery. Gui Chen, your regret is far too cheap, and far too late. If the Gu family hadn't gone bankrupt, if you hadn't been reduced to this state, would you still be regretting anything? If I weren't the chief designer at Aurelie, but a destitute, discarded woman, would you even be here? Spouting this sanctimonious nonsense, his head snapped up, his eyes fixed on me, filled with pain, resentment, and a flicker of shame at being exposed. Suman, I know you don't believe me, but I did love you, even if marrying you back then involved considerations of family interests. My feelings for you weren't completely fabricated, otherwise, I wouldn't have loved me. It was as if I'd heard the most ludicrous joke in the world. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. So hard that tears welled in my eyes. Gui Chen, stop lying to yourself, and stop trying to disgust me with your cheap lies. You never loved me. What you loved was the Suman who would sacrifice everything for you, who fed your vanity and your need for control. You love yourself, and the pathetic power and status of your precious Gu family. No, that's not true, he retorted frantically, his emotions raw. He tried to grab my hand, but I recoiled in disgust. Enough, I cut him off sharply. Unable to stomach another word of his hollow excuses and lies. Gui Chen, I don't want to hear another syllable from you. What we had is over. It's been over. The divorce papers, you will sign them, one way or another. I've already filed for divorce. The court will handle it soon enough. From this moment on, you go your way, and I'll go mine. We're done. With that, I stood up, ready to leave this suffocating place behind. Suman, his voice called out from behind me, laced with a desperate, frantic edge of despair. Do you really hate me that much, enough to strip me of everything, to leave me with nothing to live for? I stopped, slowly. I turned to face him, taking in the anguish contorting his features. My words, when they came, were measured, crystal clear, and utterly merciless. Gui Chen, I don't hate you. A faint glimmer of hope flickered in his eyes, as if he had grasped at the last lifeline. Because, I paused, a cold, mocking smile playing on my lips. You're no longer worth my hatred. To me, you're nothing but an insignificant stranger, trash that should have been cleared from my life long ago. With that, I turned and walked out of the reception room without a backward glance, leaving Gui Chen alone to slowly drown in the abyss of despair and regret. Gui Chen, what was between us ended the moment you chose to hurt me, to trample on my dignity, again and again, all for Yiziki. In this lifetime, I won't give you another chance to hurt me. I will live my own life to the fullest, more brilliantly than anyone else. I'll make all those who ever looked down on me or hurt me spend the rest of their days gazing at my back, consumed by regret and envy. In the years that followed, I never saw Gui Chen again. I heard that, unable to bear the relentless blows and face the reality of his own disability, he suffered a complete mental breakdown. He was committed to a secure psychiatric facility for mandatory treatment. He spends his days in a deranged state, babbling incoherently, shouting my name and Yiziki's name, alternating between remorse and curses. After enduring the successive blows of losing her husband, her son becoming disabled and mentally unhinged, and the complete dissipation of the family fortune, Gu's mother, Lin Huifeng, was utterly broken. On a bitterly cold winter night, she froze to death on the streets. As for me, through my own hard work and talent, I carved out my own place in the world of international jewelry design. I became a world-renowned top designer and founded my own jewelry brand, Phoenix Nirvana, symbolizing rebirth from the ashes. Just like the mythical phoenix, by my side, there appeared someone who truly loved, understood, and cherished me. He wasn't some scion of a wealthy family or a business prodigy, but a gentle and refined university professor. Yet, he gave me a sense of peace and happiness I had never known before. Together, we watched sunrises and sunsets, savor delicacies from around the world, and leave the footprints of our love in every corner of the globe. Life is simple and happy, peaceful and beautiful. Occasionally, on a certain sun-drenched afternoon, I still think of Gui Chen, that man I once loved so humbly and hurt for so deeply, but in my heart, there is no longer any turbulence, not a single ripple. It's as if he was merely an insignificant passerby in my life. A chapter long since closed and put away. What's done is done. We must always look ahead, learn to make peace with the past, and then embrace the future more fully. Right. Sunlight streamed through the studio's huge floor-to-ceiling window, spilling over me, warm and full of the scent of hope. A faint smile touched my lips as I picked up the coffee beside me and took a small, deliberate sip. Perfect. A new life was just beginning. And the darkness of the past would ultimately become the nourishment for my rebirth from the ashes. The end.